confession to make. I suffer from this thing called being a perpetually curious person that has FOMO all the time, but not the type of FOMO where I want to be at like the parties and the events, but I want to know what people are talking about, especially when it comes to books. I have a lot of FOMO when it comes to popular books, which is why, hi, hello, I'm Carol and welcome to the vlog where I'm going to read a popular book talk series, which is the Windy City series, I believe it is called, by Liz Tomforde. This is a series of interconnected standalone romance novels that starts with Mile High, then we have The Right Move, Caught Up, and then we have Play Along, and I saw that it was already announced that it will have a fifth book called Rewind It Back, but as of the time I'm filming this, which is still 2024, we still only have 4 books in the series, so in this vlog we will be reading these 4 books and seeing if they are worth the hype, because I have FOMO. I am perpetually curious. I don't necessarily think this is my best personality trait because, I don't know, let's see if these books are worth the hype. I know they are all, I think, sports romance. The first one I know it's hockey and the second one it's basketball. So I am around 60% in Mile High by Liz Tomforde, and first of all, one thing I wasn't aware is how long this book is. It is, according to my Kindle, it is 490 pages, which for a romance novel, for a rom-com, it's a lot of pages. So far, it has been a fun read, it has been an easy read, and I want to go back and continue following their story, but I'm not sure what else we will have in this book because I'm over 60% through this book and we still have like 100 pages left. It's a lot of pages. I think it's more than 100 pages. But going back, what Mile High is. So Mile High, we follow Stevie and Xander's, or Z, the Big Easy, I think it's his nickname. So Stevie, she is the flight attendant for the hockey team from Chicago, and Xander's, he's the D-man for the team, and he's known for being a bad boy and basically being a footboy outside of the rink, and inside of the rink he's known for being a douche and playing dirty and getting into fights and being kind of the enforcer of the team. And they meet and they don't necessarily get along. There is talking back between the characters. They bicker a little bit at the beginning of the book, but then they start to become friendlier and start having feelings for each other, which is something that emotionally it is kind of complicated for both characters because Xander's, he's not a person that does relationship, and he also has kind of a complicated history when it comes to love and feeling unlovable and just being himself with people. And Stevie, she has some body image problems. She also has this douche ex-boyfriend, and her ex-boyfriend was an athlete, and because of that she doesn't want to date another one. She doesn't want to give him a chance. Besides that, because she's the flight attendant for the team, there is this policy in her contract where she can fraternize with the players, but this is a romance novel, there will be fraternizing. So far, again, it's been fun. I want to continue reading their story. In order to read it though, you need to suspend a little bit your disbelief, because why do we have paparazzi following this man? Sorry, but how many hockey players are actually followed by paparazzi in their free time, wandering the streets? If you search a hockey player, a big famous hockey player, how many of them, when you search, the first result from your Google search will be a photo, a paparazzi photo of them roaming around a random street in the city they live in? And Sanders, he has this whole thing with his agent where he's like, oh, but Chicago won't resign me if I don't continue this playboy image, which is playboy image, this image that I always portray And I keep wondering how many teams actually decides to resign or sign a player solely based on their public persona. I will guess they pay more attention to how the performance is on the ice and less on their public persona, as long as they don't have some kind of big public image problem. But what do I know? I don't work in a hockey team. I don't know how their signing process go. I'm just guessing. But as long as you suspend a little bit of your disbelief, as you need to do in every rom-com ever, it's fun. And that's it. Let me go back to the book, and then I can give you maybe a final review for this one. So I finished reading Mile High, and let me start by disclaiming that, first of all, I am just a very honest person. I am honest to a fault, and also at my core, I'm not a hater. And I do tend to give relatively high ratings to books. I rarely give a book 2 stars, and it's even more rare for me to give 1 star. But for Mile High, I gave this book 4 stars because I had fun, but there were some things about this book that I think it could be better. The first thing being the length. I read it on my Kindle, and on the Kindle said it was around 490 pages, but then when I went to put it on Goodreads, it said that it was, I think, almost 600 pages, and it felt. This book didn't need to be this long, especially at the end of the book. It felt like it was just rambling. We were just going in circles and following this rambling of their inner monologue that we didn't need to. I feel like it should have been edited down, and if it was a little bit shorter and a little bit more concise, this book could have been a little bit better. The third act conflict, it didn't come out of nowhere. I kind of predicted that what would be the third act conflict, but still, usually I'm not the biggest fan of the third act conflicts, and in this one, even though it made sense, it didn't come out of nowhere, I still didn't particularly like it. I personally would like to have seen the characters deal with it in a different way. Also, it kind of, I feel like it dragged out. Actually, the whole ending, the last 100 pages, it felt like it was dragging. Also, there were some typos in the text, but they weren't there wasn't that many typos and such egregious typos that removed me completely from the narrative, but still they were there. But I did give this book 4 stars because let's talk about the positives. This book was really fun. I like the characters. I like the side characters. I do want to read the second book in the series because I liked Stevie's brother, who is Ryan, and he's one of the main characters in the second book, alongside her best friend, which is Indy, and they seem like fun characters, so I want to see what will happen in their books, and also I heard good things about that one. But in terms of Mile High, it was fine. It was a good time. If you want just an easy, fluffy rom-com, I do recommend, but it could have been better. It could have been a little bit shorter. We could have a little bit more representation of the therapy side of the story, because this was kind of an important storyline that could have been better explored, but still, it was fun. A high 4 stars. Now let's move on to the next chapter of this video. Hi, I finished reading The Right Move. Do I have any update throughout reading this book? No. Do I have any b-roll? No, I just sat and read that book. And before I get into the review part, let me tell you what The Right Move is about. So The Right Move follows Ryan and Indy. Ryan is Stevie's twin brother, Stevie being the female main character in Mile High. And Ryan, he's this big, very famous basketball player, and he's also kind of a recluse. He doesn't really have many friends. Actually, I believe At the beginning of the book, his only friends are his sister and his sister's boyfriend. He's also kind of an introvert. And then we have Indy, she's Stevie's best friend and also the other flight attendant in Mile High. And Indy, she recently broke up with her longtime boyfriend, and she can't really afford a place in the city at the moment, so she ends up going to live with Ryan. And on a completely opposite scale of the spectrum, English is very much outgoing and she's very emotional, while Ryan he's more of a stoic character. And by the way, the meet cute between Ryan and it wasn't the greatest. They didn't get off in with a good first impression of Indy. The meet cute happening in the first book. But in this book, after Indy goes to live with Ryan, the first few days aren't the best, but then Ryan, he's having this little problem with his GM, where basically this season Ryan, he became the captain of his team, but the general manager, he seems to not be very confident on him, and he doesn't know why. And then he hears from another player that the general manager's wife is really good friends with his wife, and she's kind of like the best way for you to get not as exactly in touch, but for you to build some kind of friendship, some kind of trust relationship with the GM. So Ryan, in a fit of desperation, goes to talk with the GM, and while they're talking, he kind of blurts out that he has a girlfriend, except that he doesn't have. And then Indy is walking in the hallway from the arena, and Ryan just turns and says, "Hey, there is my girlfriend." And then he needs to go and convince Indy to pretend to be his fake girlfriend. In return, he offers to go to her friend's wedding, her childhood friend's wedding, where her ex-boyfriend is also going, and basically he offers to go there and make her ex-boyfriend jealous. And she just needs to pretend to be his fake girlfriend because Ryan freaked out. And this book's so good. This book is surprisingly so good. The first book was fun. This one, where do I find a Ryan Shea? Do they sell them on Amazon? And do they have Prime shipping? Because Ryan is now on my top 5 book boyfriends. You know when you read a romance novel and when you finish, you feel like the characters are in love and you understand why its characters love each other? This is the book. These characters, you read it and yeah, it's believable that they will stay together forever because they communicate. Also Ryan, this book, it was just surprisingly so good. It was fun, the characters are lovable, you understand where these characters are coming from, what their thought process is. Everything about this book, I would say it's almost perfect. I think it is maybe a little bit too smutty for my taste, too much smut for the sake of smut. Like, I don't need to read all of the scenes, so I skimmed most of them, but it is a good book. I ended up giving this book 4.75 stars because, again, it didn't give me the 5 stars feel, it almost gave me the 5-star feel, but it is really, really good. It's more than a 4-star. And going back after reading this book, it made me wonder, is Mile High exactly a 4-star? But I think it is, even though now I found out some things from the first book that it's making me kind of question whether I should have enjoyed it more than I did. But I'm going to try and wipe that from my memory and still believe I really enjoyed that book, because Mile High was fun. The right move, it was really good. If you read Mile High and you didn't enjoy it, still give the right move a try, because it is good. Unless you really hated the writing style, give the right move a try because surprisingly good. Also, now let's go and read Caught Up, which is the third book in the series as of right now. And I didn't have any b-roll for this one, so I think I'll continue this stylistic choice for the second one, so I'll show up when I finish reading that book. Another day, kind of the same position, but let's talk about a different book because I finished reading Caught Up. So Caught Up, we follow Kai and Miller. Kai, he's kind of this big shot baseball player and he's also a single dad. His son Max, he is a little over a year old at the beginning of the book, and the mother is not in the picture, so he's basically taking care of his son alone with the help of his brother, who also plays for the same team, and some members of the team, part of the staff, because also it's kind of an ongoing joke that starts in The Right Move, the book previous to Caught Up, where basically Kai, he's kind of known for firing all the nannies he hires around 1 to 2 weeks. I think the maximum he ever stayed with a nanny was a month. So his coach, with whom he is actually quite close with, he has this brilliant idea. Basically, his coach, Monty, he has a daughter, Miller, who is the female main character from this book, and she is a very important pastry chef. She just received this big award in the pastry chef realm, but she's also going kind of through a burnout and she needs a change of pace. So Monty, her father, he has this brilliant idea of asking his daughter to spend the summer with them in Chicago, and she basically could also work as a nanny for Max because he trusts her, and also she's a nanny Kai can't really fire because she is his daughter, and Miller is also kind of forced to experience this change in lifestyle, so it's a win-win for everyone in this situation. But as the story goes on, we follow as Kai and Miller fall in love with each other, but also as Miller falls in love with Max, and she starts to brew this idea in her mind of maybe changing the pace of her life, and there is a whole internal turmoil situation going on, and I ended up rating this book 4.25. So the reason I ended up rating this book 4.25 is in part, actually mostly I would say because of the timing, because the book in itself, it is a good book. It is a really good romance novel. These characters, they are functional as characters, as a couple, and it's not toxic. It is frustrating. Yes, sometimes they are frustrating. The plot is kind of frustrating because a lot of it is motivated by internal turmoil, but also the reason why I felt like I couldn't give 4.5 or 4.75 stars to this book, it's timing. I think if I'd have waited a little bit more time between reading and finishing The Right Move and starting Caught Up, I would have enjoyed this book more because, again, objectively, this is a good book. This is a good romance novel. I had fun reading it. I wanted to continue reading it, but I didn't feel the urge to pick it up. But I think that's because I basically have been binging this whole series all in a row. I finished Mile High, and then a few days later, I started reading The Right Move, and I just read, I think, one other book, and I just finished reading another book that I was already close to the end, between Mile High and The Right Move, and then between The Right Move and Caught Up, I basically started reading them. I read one after the other. I basically binged them very close together. I don't know about you, but sometimes for me, if I read the same series all in a row, it feels like I'm reading the same thing over and over again, even if the plot's different, and I feel the urge to change a little bit, which is why I tend to read multiple books at a time, especially if I'm reading a very long book. I tend to read multiple books at a time because sometimes I just am feeling something different. I'm just in the mood to read something different, and that's what I felt while reading Caught Up. I was just in the mood to read something different, and I think that's what I'm going to do. So I finished reading this book today, which is the day I am filming this recap this review. So I think I'm going to read another book. I'm going to wait a little bit, cleanse my palate a little bit with some other genres, some other stories, some other authors, and then I'm going to go and read Play Along, because I have a feeling I will like Play Along. The premise seems really interesting, it seems cool. It's kind of weird in a way I think I will enjoy. So I'm going to take this little break, and then I'll read Play Along, and then I'll come back with a review for you. I'm back, which means I finished reading Play Along and it is time for another review. So, where do I start? I guess we can start by talking about the plot of this book or the premise of this book. But Play Along, we follow Isaiah and Kennedy. Isaiah, he is the brother from the main guy in Caught Up. He also plays for the baseball team, and he's very much of the sunshiny kind of guy. If you read Caught Up, you already met him, you already know his personality, and you also already know that Isaiah has had this massive crush towards Kennedy for many years, Kennedy being the athletic trainer in their baseball team. And at the end of Caught Up, we find out that Kennedy just recently broke up with her fiance of many years, with whom she was together, I think, for 8 years or something like that. And her fiance, he left her for her stepsister, and now they are about to get married. And at the beginning of Play Along, we start with Isaiah going on this bonding trip with the rest of his teammates, and then they go to this club in Vegas where they bump into Kennedy, who was forced to go there for her stepsister's bachelorette party. And Kennedy's just basically trying to run away from the group of mean girls, and Isaiah, he decides to help her, and in them hanging out that day, they ended up getting very drunk and getting married to each other in Vegas. And the morning after, they are set on getting an annulment because Kennedy wants the annulment, even though Isaiah, he's very obsessed with her. But she wants this annulment in part because their baseball team, they have this policy where the staff can fraternize with the players, but if the player and a member of staff have a serious relationship, they are allowed to keep their jobs. But if it is something more casual, they will be fired. They would be fired. And they are set to get the annulment, but then when they go back to Chicago, they find out that someone recognized Isaiah and took a photo of them, and now they are like front page on a sports section of some kind of newspaper. And the team knows, the team owner knows, and he calls them so they can have a meeting. And basically Isaiah and Kennedy decides to basically pretend to the team owner that they are actually married and in a very serious relationship, because this way Kennedy won't lose her job. And now for the review portion. I gave this book 4.75 stars because I don't know how Liz Tomforde managed to do it, but the first book, it's fine, but the other ones, they are in a completely different levels in terms of the storytelling, the characters. I just loved everything about this book. I love the characters. Isaiah, he's a complex, sunshiny character, and you understand the way his head is working, his mind is working. The same goes for Kennedy. They're both so complex, and they have their own personalities, and they have their own personal lives, and they have their own personal struggles that they go through, that they're going through. And one thing that I really think was a big step up from the other books was the pacing. I just really enjoyed the pacing in this book. I was reading on my Kindle and I read it without the percentage mark turned on for the majority of the time. And I think there was only one moment where I felt the urge to check out how much along I was into the book, what percentage mark I was into the book, because I was just curious, but otherwise I just didn't feel the need to check how far along I was, and at the same time could like feel how far along in the story I was. differently from Mile High and a little bit of also the right move, but especially Mile High, I felt like that book was so dragged out by the end of it, but in this one, I think it was just the perfect length, the perfect amount of length for this book to tell this story. The presentation of the side characters at some moments it did bug me out because this is quite a very long series, and especially I feel like rom-coms that are like interconnected standalones, sometimes they have this thing which I find personally very very annoying, where every time you see this other character from the previous book for the first time in this new chapter of the series, you get a recap of who they are, what they do, and a little bit of the background story between these characters, between this couple that was in the previous book. And one, I either don't want to read the previous book and that's why I jumped it, or two, I have already read the previous book and it feels redundant, these little sections. And I felt this with the other books, especially Caught Up. I felt the kind of annoyance of presenting the characters over and over again, and with this book with Play Along there was a little bit of that as well, but not in a way that felt completely overwhelming. But the characters and the side characters, like how Azaya, like Ryan Shea is like the blueprint of a book by Zaya. Liz Tomforde didn't manage to make him better than Ryan Shea, but she managed to put him in the same league as Ryan Shea. And that's something, that's a really good something. Another thing I really enjoyed about this book was the third act conflict. We need more of this kind of third act conflict in romance novels, because sometimes these third act conflicts, they come out of nowhere and they can ruin a book, but in this one you could see it coming from the beginning of the book that this might be a source of conflict in the end, or probably the reason they would have some kind of conflict. But the best thing about it was not only what it was, but how the characters handle it. We need more characters that are emotionally smart enough, with enough emotional intelligence to deal with these sorts of conflicts the way Isaiah and Kennedy dealt with them. And I could go on and on and on and on and on. This book was just so good. A very good surprise, and the previous two books in the series were good, but still it was a very pleasant surprise. As I said in my caught up clip, I felt the need to take a little bit of a break in the series just because I binged the first three books together. But then I did take a little bit of a break. I did finish reading another book in between Caught Up and Play Along, but I just kept seeing so much hype around this one, so many people saying how good it is, that I felt I had FOMO and I decided to pick it up before I was planning to, and I'm glad I did, because I still think I'm going to take a little bit of a break from rom-coms. Still, I'm glad I picked it up because the hype is very real. This is a good rom-com, and I'm going to wrap up this review here because I feel like I'm yapping, I'm talking, I'm rambling, talking way too much about this book, and I don't want to give you spoilers. But if you're looking for a good rom-com, I recommend this book. I recommend the series. If you're looking for a good series, romance, interconnected standalones romance series, or some kind of sports romance, I do recommend the city. I do recommend this series. If you read the first book in this series and you were kind of mad about it or you didn't enjoy it, I do recommend giving the second book a chance. Give the second book a chance, because It is just so surprisingly better, and the series just gets so surprisingly better after the first one. So I do recommend giving it a try, and Play Along is not the last book in this series, but as of the day I'm filming this clip, it is. Next year it is coming, I think it's called Rewind Back, which is Rio's book, and it is already announced that this will be the last book in this series, which is, I think it's good because this series would maybe be a little bit too long if we had more books coming. So finishing off with Rio will, I think it's a good point to finish a series which is 5 books, yes. Hopefully though, this doesn't mean we won't get a Monty book, because I really want Monty's enemies to lovers book with the girl he can stop arguing with. If you read Play Along, you know who she is, and Monty is just such an interesting character that I would love to have his book. In terms of a rating, I didn't do count, but I think like I would rate the Wind City series a solid 4 or 4.25 stars. It's for interconnected or standalone romance novels. It is, I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. Will these books win the Pulitzer? No, but I just like the way Liz Tomforde constructed these stories, and the romance starting from the second book on, and these characters, and the way the third act conflicts. Usually third act conflicts, again, can be very, very annoying, but from the third book on, even the first book, but especially from the third book on, these third act conflicts, you want more of them. Stop giving the readers these third act conflicts that come out of nowhere and give these kind of things, kind of conflicts that are happening in these books. So, but yeah, let's finish off this video. And if you read the Winning City series, please let me know your opinions in the comment section. Is there any other series you would love for me to read and review with you? And if you like this video, consider leaving a like and subscribe so you can get more bookish and fashion related content in your subscription box. And I hope to see you very, very soon with another video. Bye!